Good afternoon. Going to call this meeting of the Invocation to order. First, we're going to be led in prayer by Delegate John Cole.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let us pray together. Father, we give you thanks and praise, and we thank you for this time of collaboration that we can do what we can to protect the environment, protect the Rappahannock River that you've given us, courtesy that you've given us custodially. We ask that you would bless our minds, bless the work of our hands, that it may do the work that you have called us to do. Give you thanks and praise. Amen.
Amen. We'll be led by the pledge of allegiance by Mr. Paul.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, order of business, termination, Quorum of today's business. Okay. Next, welcome and introductions. We will start over here to my left at the end of the table. We'll walk around the table. We'll go to members online. Yes.
Good afternoon, Bryan Nickel, Orange County, representing District 5 and serving as chair this year.
Mike Snyder, representing the Madison County Board of Supervisors.
Good afternoon, Cole, representing the 65th district at Stafford County, for the Father.
Stacey Farrell, delegate for the 64th district at that. Jenna Robinson from the Ferguson.
There's no one to thank.
Bill Scott represents 63rd district. James Sam.
It's Sarah Duran, for the 7th district, Senate district. I'm Hillary Kent, Big Brother Neck and portion of Caroline, District 67, House Delegate.
It's long, that been your keyboard.
Ronnie Gill, that's just okay. Delegate Nicole Cole, representing Spotsylvania and Carolina.
Joseph Stepp, Hannibal, Carolina, Saltwater Conservation District.
Woody Henson, Westmoreland County Board of Supervisors.
We have members online.
Members on, let's see, back in. Let's see, representing, Senator Reed's office.
Hi, my name is James Manitz. I serve as Chief of Staff for Senator Reeves, who represents Virginia's 28th Senatorial District.
Thank you. We have, Delegate McCall. Introduce yourself. Delegate McCall.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Sorry, I have little audio visual difficulties. Wish I could be there with you today, got squeezed, but I am John McAuliffe. I represent Northern Fauquier County, as well as Western Loudoun. And this is my first term in the Virginia House of Delegates, but I served as a Chief of Staff for several years before that, for Delegate Reed, who did not have any of the basin, but excited to work with you all and excited to have you up in Fauquier sometime next year for one of your meetings.
Thank you. Senator Gregory.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mariela Mejia, the District Director for Senator Russet Perry, and I'm happy to be here in this meeting with you all.
Let's see, I have a video SMG. I'm assuming that's something to do with a board of supervisors. So good. Ask that person to come up, we can introduce himself. Okay. And we've got, did I miss anybody else we did? Okay.
And then we'll go to the room. We'll start over here. First amendment. Hey, good afternoon, General Deputy Secretary of Ag.
If I may, Ben, you said, Ben is newly appointed Secretary of Ag and Forestry. We do a lot of interaction with the Secretary of Ag and Forestry's office, and thank you very much for your boss asking you to come and meet with us today, and we appreciate it very much.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
I'm John, banking, announcement. I don't know how to put the.
I'm David Fiscal, Virginia Department of Health. John Randall, Stevenson, please.
Bryan, Spotsylvania County Utilities.
Lisa Dickinson, Mount Castle, I'm here by proxy for Senator Richard Starrett and I have a farm on Rappahannock River in Essex County.
Chip Boyles with the George Washington Regional Commission and I've all planning District 60. Bryan Hofmann, Deputy Director, Prince the Randall Community, so be president.
I'm Joel Fix, the services.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if I may, before we go any farther, that, VOSMG is my guy with the Stanford Board of Supervisors. Maya, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm Maya Guy with Stafford County, and I am having problems hearing you, but I am trying to follow along as best I can. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll try to speak up as loud as we can.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yes, online?
Let's see, we have, Kevin Gentry with Middlesex County. Kevin, would you introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Gentry. I'm the incoming county administrator for Middlesex County. And it's nice to see you all here virtually. I hope to meet you one day in person sometime soon.
And Lisa Hall, the Northern RRBC.
Good afternoon, Lisa Hall with the Northern Ag Planning District Commission, as Alan mentioned. Good to see you all.
Next order of business is the election of the chair, vice chair, and executive committee. With that being said, I hand the gavel over to Mr. James. Thanks for the meeting.
Thank you very much. My opportunity to screw around the meeting. And the floor is open for nominations for chair.
I would nominate Bruce Gottlieb and serve as the development.
Any other nominations? All in favor of Phil Scott continuing the second year as chair of the Rappahannock RRBC Commission, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
And you got ways to go to keep up with the number of years Jason still does.
I don't know if we're gonna stick around that long. Next order of business is the election of vice chair. Do we have any nominations? Yes, sir.
Mr. Ronnie Gill.
We have a nomination for Brian Gill. Do we have a second? And any other nominations? Closing nominations, all in favor of Brian Gill being vice chair, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Gill. Next is the executive committee.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, just as a little background, executive committee, under the commission bylaws, they established creating a 5-member executive committee that would exist in case there was some action the commission needed to take in between meetings. Now, that hasn't happened in over a decade, but the commission did have a situation where the executive committee had authorized filing a grant application because under our bylaws, the staff cannot make a decision to file a grant application unless the commission is on. And so it would only be in that rare instance. The commission's executive committee or the chair and the vice chair and a representative of each of the 3 areas of basin. The other basin is the Rappahannock Regional Commission jurisdictions. The middle basin or the GWRC jurisdictions, the lower basin or the northern basin as well. Jurisdictions. And let's see, last year, Ronnie Gill was the member from the lower basin. Dr. Young was the representative from the middle basin, and Debbie Donahue from the upper basin. Well, none of them can be reelected because they're not needed. So right, no money's not eligible. So, we're looking for volunteers. So Nancy, along volunteering to serve as the middle basin, like I said, the executive committee hadn't met in 10 years. Okay.
I was sure that's on the middle basis.
That is Peter Jones, so I would also be middle.
Yeah, you can also be middle basin.
And who will be,
We got Madison and Orange counties, Bryan.
I'm happy to serve.
Bryan. Lower Basin, Kathy? Oh, that's right, we do this in this song. You know, that's that King George's.
I know. That is.
I'm always terrible.
Carolyn. I know what we're doing. Carolyn is there a golf leader. Carolyn is.
Okay, so, Lower Basin, Jason Bellows. So you know, long serving duty was chairman goes on float. Ryan Nichols from the Upper Basin and these laws as well. So I need somebody to take a motion.
So, sorry.
All in favor? Opposed? You have our new second committee.
Thank you very much. I'll get it, maybe call the meeting next week.
Everybody, correct. Next is the appointment of fiscal agent, Mr. James.
The Code of Virginia requires that the River Basin Commission identify a fiscal agent at the beginning of each calendar year. We'll get fiscal agent for fiscal years, so that we appoint on the calendar year basis. So, Board of Water Municipal Commission has served as the commission's fiscal agent since the commission was established in 1988. Unless you change your mind in the last few minutes, I'm sure you always volunteer to continue that role. So.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Have it.
Right, the board especially when you stuff is important.
Thank you, Mr. James. Next, we have review and approval of the agenda that is before us. Do we have a motion to accept the agenda?
No, second.
We motion second, any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it, the agenda has been approved. Next up is the consent agenda. We have the Irrigation Commission FY26 Work Plan review, year-to-date financial report. Separate from their meeting, do I have a motion?
So,
Do you have a second? Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it, consent agenda has been approved. Next, we are at public comment. If anybody from the public here for public comment? Sir, if you would. Introduce yourself and then.
Yeah.
Board votes.
Yeah, my name's Joel Penix.
If you could go to the podium, that would be on the microphone, the close online.
Gotcha.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Joel Penix. I'm a concerned citizen. As many of you know, the General Assembly created authority.
No, we don't get these on.
No.
Thank you.
I left my big stick in the car.
Thank you.
You can hear it. Or just hold it. How about if I just talk?
We can hear
I
you.
think we got it.
Okay. My name is Joel Penix, I'm a concerned citizen. Many of you know the General Assembly, carved out a special group, counties, and took the Chesapeake Bay pump out program, from those counties and gave it to the Virginia Department of Health with, specific mandates to manage that program. And that included, millions of dollars of funding over 7 years. And we're about halfway through that now. Right now, the health department's had, over $3.5 million of funding, for this program. And, I wrote a letter about this, and many of you, I think, received it. Mr. James, can I give you a copy to enter into the record? No. My concern is, and as many of you are, legislators and stewards of public funds, which is a paramount concern. It strikes me as really concerning that we've spent over $3.5 million and the health department has yet to send out a single enforcement letter. And they issued a report. They issued an interim report last year that was 4 months late. They issued a final report this year that was maybe 6 weeks, 2 months late. And in reviewing that report, there's lots of narrative and not a lot of numbers, not a lot of metrics, not a lot of performance metrics. And so my concern is that after spending millions of dollars, there's virtually no evidence of an effective program implementation. Given this lack of performance, the continued funding of BDH's program is unjustified and should be rescinded. Now, I know there's still some time left in the General Assembly to go through the budget, and that's possibly an opportunity, but not a likely outcome. So my thought is that at a minimum, the BDH should have to report specific metrics on an annual basis in order to continue to gain funding for the next year. And some of those metrics are, what are the full-time equivalents assigned to the pump out program? What are the total staff hours devoted to the program? The number of database addresses updated and completed and verified, the number of enforcement letters issued, the number of enforcement letters returned as undeliverable, and the number of conventional pump outs reported. And this is just fiscal responsibility, accounting, and reporting. And you can't find any of that in their report in the final either. And the taxpayers and the Chesapeake Bay deserve better results. And so I will urge you, especially legislators, I know it's not going to be a top priority, but I would urge you to consider making some proposals when you get back into Richmond and start going through the budget again. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. Any other folks here for public comment in the room?
Mr. Chair, on the comments you heard from the public.
We'll have an opportunity to get a meeting. Please, for those time.
No, we can have, notice identified recently.
And we will come back to comments. I'll do that at the end, or comments from members. Next up, we have the Chesapeake Bay Septic Pump-Out Program, mediation report, RD 1005. Lance Gregory, director.
And you have a copy of this slide deck. Let's see.
Good afternoon, members of the commission, I really appreciate, speaking, and do appreciate Mr. Kennedy's concerns and the tools to address. You all hear me okay?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to lunch and all that. Wait,
That better? My name is Gregory. I'm the director for the Office of Environmental Health Services at the Virginia Department of Health. And appreciate the opportunity to come to you today. Appreciate Mr. Bennett's comments. And hopefully this will help to address some of those comments. So wanted to come and talk to you today about the Septic Tank Pump Out program at the Virginia Department of Health. And we've presented on this to the commission before. We wanted to provide a little bit of background on kind of how we got here. So prior to 2019, all of this was done by localities, prior to 2023, done by localities. And local governments were kind of feeling the squeeze they had for reporting. They didn't have dedicated staff necessarily to look at this pump out program, and they were looking for some assistance. A lot of times they were directing people to the health department with questions. And so there was a request for the Department of Health to do a study on the potential to transition that pump out program. So in 2019, there was legislation, House Bill 2322, that directed BPH to develop a plan for transitioning the oversight and enforcement within the rural coastal Virginia Community Enhancement Authority. And that authority covers 12 localities in northern Mackinac Peninsula and the eastern shore regions of the state. And it's you're not required to be a member of that to be concluded in this study or concluded in the work that resulted from it. In 2021, BDH provided our final report from that study. And then the following year, there was legislation put forward to actually begin that transition or to direct the transition to the Department of Health. Just a little bit of background, why is this important? Why are we even talking about pump outs within the Chesapeake Bay or within the Rappahannock River Basin? So pump outs are one of three best management practices for which the state can achieve a credit for nitrogen reduction with on-site sewage systems. So we get a credit of essentially 5% for a pump out with an on-site sewage system. There's also credits for houses that are served by an alternative on-site sewage system. So not just your conventional system, but having some type of additional treatment, maybe pressure dispersal and nitrogen reduction on that system. And then the last one is connection to public sewage. So those are the only three ways that we can get credits within the on-site sector for reducing nitrogen to the Chesapeake Bay. And that overall, the on-site sector is estimated to account for 3 to 4% of the nitrogen inputs to the Chesapeake Bay. So just to give some perspective to like just the scope of what we're talking about here within the Three Rivers Health District and Eastern Shore Health District, which covers our northern neck, middle peninsula and eastern shore regions of the state. We estimate there's somewhere between 80,000 to 100,000 on-site sewage systems within the 12 localities included within this legislation. And those numbers come from a couple of different data sources. So VDH began tracking our permitting data within a database in 2003. So any permits, any new systems and repairs that have been issued from 2003 to now have been tracked within that system. And we have a pretty good handle on that data. And then the US Census prior to 1990 also included a question about whether your home is served by an on-site sewage system or not. So we have pretty good data from 1990 and prior. And there's really just this gap between 1990 and 2003 where we don't have perfect data on the number of systems. So we looked at some other data sources, some reports from deep localities to help us come up with that estimate. So talking about the enabling legislation that actually moved the program over. Thank you. So as I mentioned, in 2022, we had additional legislation that directed VDH to take over oversight of the on-site sewage system or the pump out program within 12 localities. And it again limited to the eastern shore, the Middle Peninsula, and the northern neck regions of Virginia. And there was an effective date of that transition for July 1st of 2023. Another key part of that legislation is that it does require operators or sewage handlers to report their pump outs to VDH using a web-based reporting tool so that we're able to track. And then within the enabling legislation, there was a requirement for VDH to submit 2 reports, one interim report in 2024 and the final report in 2025. And the link here at the bottom is to our final report. As far as the breakdown of the budget and how that is set out, we split that up amongst 2 health districts. So Three Rivers Health District covers 10 of the 12 localities that are included within that legislation, shifting the program from local governments having to manage this program to BDH, and then 2 localities in the Eastern Shore. So our Three Rivers Health District receives just under $560,000 annually. And that is to cover 4 full-time employees that are dedicated to the pump out program. Also their general equipment costs, computers and supplies, office space, things of that nature. And then there's a significant portion of that budget that's dedicated to mass mailings and public outreach. So sending letters, push door hangers, different approaches for notice to homeowners that are in need of a pump out to meet the requirement. And then Eastern Shore Health District receives just over $275,000 of the total budget, and that is for 2 full-time positions. And then again, covering their equipment, supplies, mailing, and public outreach materials. And then lastly, just under $180,000 out of the total budget comes to the Office of Environmental Health Services. That fund 1 full-time position is dedicated to management of the database components related to the pump out program. And it also covers our costs. Our environmental health database is operated by a third-party vendor. And so we cover a cost for the maintenance of that database. There was an additional cost of adding the conventional system pump out component. And so this that fund also covers our vendor's costs for adding in the pump out tracker. As Mr. Bennett noted, we have had some staffing difficulties, and this is not unique to the pump out program. So our Three Rivers Health District filled all 4 of their positions in 2003. And David Foley, the environmental health manager for Three Rivers Health District, is here, and he's going to provide some additional information, kind of what they're working on for this year. But they had 25% turnover of their positions. And then the Eastern Shore Health District was able to only fill 1 position in 2023. They had staff shortages in not just their pump out program, but some of their general environmental programs that year. And so they were filling multiple positions, and they were not able to fill the second position until 2024. And then unfortunately, both of those positions have turned over in the course of hiring those. The position within the WHS was filled in 2023, and that staff member has been maintained since she came on board. And so just to talk about the staffing turnover and give some perspective to that, we have 144 staff within the Department of Health that have touched an on-site permit in the local department since in 2025, and that's looking at our database and the number of staff that review the permit over sharing this, reviewing the permit. Since 2019, we've had 148 new environmental health specialists come through our on-site sewage system training. And so that's a training that we do, new staff coming in. So effectively, we've turned over the entire staff since 2019. But it's not that we're really turning over every position. There are some positions, certain districts that really struggle to keep staff in place, especially when you get closer to Northern Virginia, where maybe they're able to take a job in Loudoun County or Fairfax County and get a differential. Or we have staff going to other agencies. So this is kind of an across the board issue that we're trying to tackle. One thing that we have done just this past month is updated our environmental health career plan to set out some additional parts of the ladder for people coming in as environmental health specialists. Previously, we had an environmental health specialist, and once you have completed your training, we moved into an environmental health senior position, which provided you a small increase in salary. We've now added a third level to that, and environmental health specialist 3, that is for credentialed staff, provides some additional reporting ability to helping maintain and retain our staff. In terms of responsibilities, overall program implementation is all on 2 Three Rivers in the Eastern Shore Health District. And then our support staff at the Office of Environmental Health are helping with the database component. So that includes they're doing education and outreach to the public. They're working with sewage haulers. There was a lot of upfront work that they did with sewage haulers to, one, just make sure they were getting their inspections, everybody was properly licensed, everybody was properly permitted by BDH. And there were some enforcement that went along with that. Similarly, Three Rivers Health District had some lagoons that are connected to our pump out program because they're disposal sites for that waste. And so doing inspections and permitting and enforcement on some of those, there was also some needed improvements to some of those sites. And then another key part has been developing a complete inventory. So as I mentioned, we have data from 2003 to current in our database, but anything prior to that and back into the 50s and 60s is hard copy records at the local health department. So getting that data into our database so that we can ensure when we're sending letters, we're doing outreach, we're touching everybody that's involved, and then clean up all the data that's in the database itself. And then lastly, the O&M records themselves, so we're getting those pump out reports from the sewage haulers and ensuring that those are connected to the correct property in the database. And that also includes operation and maintenance reports for alternative systems, which, as I noted earlier, is another credit that we get for thermal nitrogen in the Chesapeake Bay. And then lastly, dealing with Freedom of Information Act request. So when you send these letters out to the property owners, they hire us and tell us a lot of times they're result in someone requesting a record of the file so that they can find that tank when they do their job. First step for our staff was again developing a online database or an online portal where the operators could go in and submit their operation and maintenance or their pump out reports. We previously already had a system for alternative system operation maintenance. So we were able to piggyback off of that and modify that to include the conventional pump outs. And so then it was the next step was then for the local departments to work with sewage haulers and start getting them to use that data for them. Then in terms of actual pump outs and what we've seen since the program transitioned to the local health departments in 2023, which the program transitioned halfway through that year, we had only about 767 pump outs reported in the rivers, or less than 100 on the eastern shore. And then each of the subsequent years, that number has increased. So we had 25, a little bit over 2,500 in Three Rivers in 2024, and almost 3,500 in 2025. As noted, the target would be approximately 20,000 per year to get to 100% compliance. And if you go back and look at our interim report and our full report, we do also talk about kind of the levels of where the pump out numbers were prior to the transition. So you can see, and it varied by locality. There were some localities that were doing a fantastic job and they had a very well run program, but there's a lot of localities that just did not have the resources and weren't able to do that kind of things to Bryan. One of the benefits of creating this program is, while it's required to do the pump out reports within Three Rivers and Eastern Shore Health Districts, they can voluntarily be submitted from areas outside of those two health districts. But if it's within the Chesapeake Bay, we can still submit that to DEQ for BMP credit for the state. And so we are tracking that outside of Three Rivers. And so last year we had almost 5,000 reports total across the state that were submitted. And we also were able to import data from several localities into our database. And so when you look at that total there of almost 83,000, a lot of that is historical pump out data that we were able to import in. With the legacy data coming up, so that has been a significant component of David and his team and the Eastern Shores team's work. There have been thousands and thousands of individual records that have been reviewed. We were working with the localities to try and do some bulk importing of data, so localities have historical pump out records. This chart just shows what we were able to actually import into the system. So for instance, Lancaster County, they gave us just under 6,096 records. And we were able to import 6,089 of those into the system. So we were able to capture quite a bit of the data they provided. It really depended on the quality of data that we got from the locality, whether it could be populated into our database. And then again, David, his team, doing a lot of this data work, of taking hard copy records and putting that into the system. As I mentioned, alternative system operation and maintenance reports. That's another component that this team is, as part of that, BMP reporting, making sure that they're up to date on. And last time I looked, the reports received, I think Three Rivers was above 90% of their reports received had been actually connected and in the database, so that we're getting credit for those. And it's never at 100%, because you're constantly getting new reports in. But that has been another significant improvement that we've seen from the state level, because the compliance rate on alternative system operation maintenance and report connections in Three Rivers Health District as a result of these staff. And if I'm getting close to time, I apologize if I haven't from the depths. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So in terms of outreach and efforts there, and I'll let David come up in just a second and speak more to this. So the local health departments have sent thousands of letters to property owners regarding their need for operation and maintenance. So in March of 2025, there was a bulk mailing that was sent out, and David's team tracked the response rate and tracked the increase rate that they saw from reporting after that, and they saw a 13% increase in pump out reports within the month preceding that bulk mailing that went out. There was another bulk mailing of 2,000 postcards to homeowners that were in need of a pump out in August of 2025. And so, yeah, I'm hopeful that we can use the lessons learned off of these bulk mailings and off of the reporting requirements to track, how effective they're being, and be able to modify, language or outreach methods to make them as effective as possible. And his team has also done a fantastic job going to different events, doing in-person outreach at different fairs or festivals. So thank you at the Oyster Festival in Urbana, if I remember correctly, had a group set up to do outreach to the community there as well. And so with that, I'll turn it over to David if you want to go ahead. Words and what your team is working on this year.
Sure. Thank you very much, Lance. And I'm happy to be here today and talk with you a little bit just to give our local perspective from Three Rivers Health District, which are the counties of the Northern Neck and the Middle Peninsula. So thanks again. Our team, as Lance said, is tiny but mighty. As of today, we've got 2 full-time, fully onboarded employees as part of the team. One person came to join the team last week. Somebody was on with some lengthy medical leave. So again, it's a small group of people, but I'm as proud as I can be of them for the work that they have done building this program within the Virginia Department of Health locally, pretty much from the ground up. And of course, our main goal in this program, which aligns with one of our agency main goals, is to be a trusted source of health information. That is the key to us being able to build up an implementation of this program that leads to effective enforcement, which I know is one of the key things we are asked to talk about, including public awareness. As Lance said, we've done about 12,000 digitally addressed mailings to Middlesex, Northumberland, and Lancaster, and King and Queen counties this year. I know we are going to be moving toward Matthews and Gloucester counties, and of course, all those mailings also precede phone calls, questions, follow-up from the public. So we're making sure that we can devote appropriate resources to take the time to respond to the people when they hear from us. Of course, and we also do in-person events and education. Public gatherings, fairs, festivals, events, realtors trainings. This year, we're going to be trying to focus on having increased media presence, working with the local government, our local resource councils, to get more involved with them, to provide homeowner clinics, especially in the areas we have already been targeting with mailings, to educate them about their septic systems and proper maintenance and upkeep, why it's important and what the homeowner gets out of it. Why is it to their advantage? How does this work to them? Also, we're going to be working on increased industry and contractor trainings. We've done a lot of one-on-one. We want to try to get some more group trainings, both on the electronic portal and just specifically on the codes and works. Meanwhile, is continuing to work on improving its library food systems that we have in our local database, our list of owners, and of course, the ongoing tracking of performance and compliance with the requirements by our owners. And again, working to make sure that all of our pumpers and our disposal sites are up to snuff, properly permitted, inspected, and ready. All those not enough with them. in order that we can work towards being the most important thing that we can be, which is to be fair, to be consistent, to be helpful. And I'm going to return to that word again. The key word is to be trusted, so that we can be effective as we implement this program and work toward enforcement. That's where we're at, just in a snapshot. Yeah.
Thank you, Dave. So I would like to close out and highlight the challenges that we have faced with implementation. Thank you. So, one item I mentioned is our local import tool that we were working on, and David's team and our database team have worked really closely with our vendor. We're continuing to push on that. We've gone through several rounds of user acceptance testing on that, and there's been continued bugs. But if we can get that in place, is really going to help us with those data sets from the localities, help us with the complete inventory. As I mentioned, staff turnover, that is a consistent issue for BDH and environmental health. And again, that environmental health career plan update that went out earlier this month, hopefully will help us start moving in a right direction, improving our turnover. Hauler acceptance of the online reporting tool is another key piece. I think David's team has done a really great job going out and meeting one-on-one with the sewage hauler. We've got quite a few haulers that are using this exactly as needed. I know on the Eastern Shore, our partners there have been put a little bit lower rate of acceptance. And so ultimately, that's where the rubber meets the road. The homeowner gets the letter, they hire a pumper, the pumper does the work. But if that report doesn't come into us, we don't know that it was actually done. So there's actually likely many more pump outs that have occurred as a result of this. The report just hasn't come in. That's getting to David's point about those phone calls. The homeowner gets the letter, they call David's team and say, hey, why am I getting this? I had my system pumped out last week. And so we need to follow up to make sure that they're on board with us. And as you mentioned, we have done some training in different statewide events. But the last piece, and I think probably the most critical piece for not just this program, but the statewide with pump outs is disposal capacity. And it's one thing that we've heard a lot of concerns about here. So in Mr. Reynolds, nothing in Stafford County says, Stafford County quit accepting waste from outside localities while they were going through some upgrades. And it was kind of brought to light how many people were relying on those facilities for their disposal from, especially the northern neck region of the state. And there's just a limited amount of disposal capacity. On the Eastern Shore, it's even more critical. The pump outs there that are occurring are either having to go into Maryland or across Bay Bridge down to Virginia Beach to do their disposal. So there's a dire need for increased capacity for disposal facilities. And this is not just an issue in Virginia, it's actually an issue nationwide. There's a National Pumpers Association that actually put together a white paper that they were presenting to multiple different states on options for how to try and address this capacity issue. We've had several different individuals come to the local health department, come to DEQ, come to BDH to ask about the potential to install lagoons and try and increase capacity through lagooning. I know there's been some discussions with planning district commissions and other groups about potential dump station facilities that need to be tied into other wastewater treatment plants, across jurisdictional boundaries. So, and I know the Department of Environmental Quality has been reviewing this issue along with us. We've been communicating with them and trying to find different solutions and potential ideas for how we can address that disposal capacity. But ultimately, where that creates the issue is the cost. And so we've had reports of pump outs being as high as $800 in parts of the northern neck. And that is exceedingly high Historically, we were looking at, $300, $350, so an $800 pump out. For anyone is a lot, but for lower income families on fixed budget, individuals on fixed budget, that can be a substantial cost to try and take on. And that ultimately gets to our enforcement piece of, we're sending out letters, we are reaching out, we have sent thousands of letters to individuals. But getting to that actual enforcement of, okay, you have not pumped this out, we're gonna come and issue a civil penalty. That's something that when this legislation went through, there was a discussion about, let's see where we can get with education before we start doing a lot of enforcement, because ultimately we issue somebody a civil penalty for $50, $100, that's $50 or $100 that could have gone to that town meeting. And with that, I will make one last plug, and just say that I really appreciate the planning district commissions from the Rappahannock Basin area. They've been really helpful with us for our technical assistance program. We've done a lot of really great work with those partners, helping homeowners in need repair failing on-site sewage systems. We've had over 300 families statewide that received funding through that program, and a lot of that was done in the Rappahannock River Basin. So we'll appreciate all the support we've got a little bit of. And so to the last point, I do appreciate it again, finish your comments in with regards to metrics. And if part of the concern is, reporting, so we had a report that was in the code that we had to submit in 2025, that does not mean that we're not going to continue to track this information. What I've heard is tracking our FTEs and dedicated staff into that. The number of letters that we're sending out, the number of pump outs that are occurring, which are all the things that we are tracking that we can share. And we'll certainly continue to track moving forward and have to come back in the future and share updates.
So, did you possibly want to have a conversation and ask a question or comment prior to this presentation? I want to follow this.
No, I just did it because I don't know who his delegate is, but. And available, I'm feel like I was just help if more information is needed, wherever your delegate is, or I can help just to pull information from the nature of the agency to get you that data, because hopefully some of it does exist, so that.
That's what I said, let's wait, because I need to make mom, so, question over here.
Well, it's not a question, it's a comment that, we have the Dalton wastewater treatment plant, and we are investigating being able to accept outside septic, but some know that there's some upgrades that have to be done because it has been previously under consent order, but I'm gonna look at delegates and our senators and our assistants to maybe help fund that so that we can help would be appreciated, because the prices that we receive for the engineering for some of those upgrades are expensive for a locality or service authority. Just getting back on our feet to be able to afford.
Any other questions, comments from board members?
Yeah, could you go back to slide 10? If you bring it up, if you can't miss it on. I was just wondering, this is probably a technical question, you may have covered it, but there, for example, Essex County, Northumberland County, they have wide gaps in, I guess, what's received and what's actually imported. And the other localities look like they're fairly balanced out. Is there a reason behind that? Am I missing something?
Yes, so these were data sets that the local governments had been maintaining with regards to their pump out records. And we had to have kind of one-to-one data fields of the data they provided and the data fields that we have in our database. And then also the addresses were identifiable. That we could actually import in. We do have minimum data fields, so there's specific fields that we have to have in order to create a record in our database. And so if we didn't have all of those required fields, then it wouldn't import all of it. And so that's why you have kind of the discrepancy. So the ones where, 99.9% of them were able to populate through, that just means those localities basically were tracking the same data points that were minimum requirements for us to upload into our system. Whereas the others may have had a lot of null values or empty fields.
So maybe, is there anything we can do to help that data be more in line? Because it looks to me like a small deal, I guess it was the localities that don't match out.
And I'll defer to David on this a little bit. So part of that is, this was trying to do bulk importing, so taking a data set and, can we get 20,000 records in without David's team having to one by one do that work? And so for those records that we're able to import, and that's part of the work that they're doing going to.
Well, I won't hold them because we can take this offline. Thank you.
Do you have, data on the increase of pump outs completed over the last 3 years versus before the program went underneath?
Yes, so and I apologize that I did not. So that number, so we do have that in our reports. We talk about the pump out numbers prior to, there was a substantial drop off in the first 2 years because we were kind of ramping up our program. So there were, localities that were sending letters. They weren't getting it from the locality or us, so as that program ramped up, there was a lull here. And so she saw the chart, the first year was under 1,000 and 2,500, and now it's ramping back up. So that's, the first couple of years, I can admit it was lower than the rates that the localities were reporting previously.
I have my part. I would love for us to connect specifically about the challenges that you're facing, that you noticed specifically about continuing to push vendor on project completion and then giving you the necessary documents after it's completed. So would love to just better understand what that process is, generally from a BDH standpoint, to see if there's something from a legislative perspective that we can do, because we want to make sure. I always say my 20 years of military service, the job's not done until the paperwork is not complete, then that's inhibiting our ability to better understand what's going to be done from a general perspective. So I have a part, I want to connect. Take up too much time on that, but it's not here. It's more than it should.
Any other questions from us? All right, I do have a few questions about myself. I noticed that like the localities here, Spotsylvania is not included. But I also know that Spotsylvania really did a big surge last year with sending out notices, including various associations. One that I'm involved with, like those that send out to all the members saying, hey, pump it out, you're getting it fine. And then, it was like, wait, what's going on? So even though this focus has been on these 12 localities, has there been any expansion to others, or is it just like Spotsylvania just like, oh, we need to get back up and go?
So the legislation that enabled this only transitioned that oversight to BDH within those 12 localities. So the other localities within the Chesapeake Bay watersheds that are doing these pump out programs is still locally managed. So that increased effort would have been from the local government entities.
The reason why I asked is I know there was a conversation with the Spotsylvania that kind of initiated that.
Right.
So I wasn't sure, it was like, kind of like the buzz in the office was about pump out, and so like, oh, wait, we have heard it from these localities, let's do a little further agency to locality communication to do that.
Right. And that ultimately was part of the backing on this. Was there was a push on the localities in this area to enhance their outreach near levels to homeowners. And a lot of those localities were saying, we just don't have a dedicated staff member to do that work. This seems like it would fit better with PDA, why don't you send it there and then kind of handle that work as it goes to the localities.
What kind of pushback are you receiving from some of the smaller companies, small companies that are doing pump out? They've been doing it for 20, 30, 40, 50 years with online recruiting, because And again, speaking to the little buzz that happened in like Wilderness last year, they were like, well, I've already done this, why am I getting this notice? So what kind of all can be done with these companies to make sure they're reporting properly?
And go over to David, I think that gets to the training that you were talking about.
Sure, absolutely. That's really a great question. And I think our experience has been, and I can only talk about Three Rivers Health real quick. Those 10 counties where we had 19 or 20 operators, many of which were mom-and-pop area villages, a very small, one person with a truck, or one person or assistant with a truck, getting them to get away from writing a paper receipt book, and handing it to the owner as a sales receipt, and getting them acclimated to using a web-based reporting system has been has a real opportunity for us. I mean, it's a challenge because it's an extra thing that is actually legally required, yet we also have to persuade the operator to do it. And getting them both tech savvy to be able to do it, because the system as we have it now is not really attractive on the cell phone, which is probably what the company will have with them. So we have to go back to the office or have a tablet or a laptop and that information. That's one hurdle to pass. Getting people even just to have the account, be trained, be able to do it, and to be able to do it properly is the other educational component that we've got. And that's going to be a big push for us again this year. I think we made really good strides. We really have, but we have more work to do, and we recognize locally, and again, I want to credit my team, they recognize how important and crucial this is so that they don't receive a shoebox full of paper receipts, which is not really of any use to us. But that we get actionable information, that's just a key probably for us to do something.
And I know all about the big receipts because that's what our guy uses for our house. He's got several lists, right? All what's gonna happen is there a way for the homeowner to go into a portal and say, was completed by this date, on this date, back by this company, and then that can be a follow-up that you all can have, like, okay, this company is repeatedly not doing the online portal, so it's not receiving repeat follow back upon, so is there a way for the homeowner to provide that feedback?
So currently, we do not have that, but I appreciate that feedback. So right now, part of that online system is managing this. We have licensed individuals reporting that. So in order to get a lot of them, we have to reach out to our databases, to properly permitting for us to all have the proper licenses. But that's certainly something we can look into, another option there. And to David's, just to follow on David's comment about the mobile friendly, that's something that we've also been working on, is trying to make that application more mobile friendly, so the sewage all might be more apt to use it, if they can be out in the field and not have to wait till they get back into the office.
The development of that, you know, geospan, or like they actually mix with one of that. Doing it that way, we actually, they're not just randomly out being throwing in an address as they did, but it's geolocated to property that they said they're helping out. We got a question over here.
So, you know, GWRC, we have a grant to help with failing septic systems. And without the legislators here, it seems like ultimately the goal for the Rappahannock is compliance. And that some people are not complying because they are failing the septic systems and they don't have funds to fix them. But I know we can go through it this year to speak to it better. It's another GWRC members, but we go through that money very quickly. So I just wanted to say, like, I think if compliance is the goal, that having a little more money in that pot, GWRC is staffing that and facilitating that program.
Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, thank you very much for your time, sir. Thank you for the presentation. And next, we have Bryan and Hofmann.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission for having me. It's already my 12th year. You're invited to come join here. I really appreciate you being involved in the Rappahannock. And today, actually, I'm pleased to be representing a broader coalition of conservation partners at Rappahannock Roundtable. And she told me how to use this and see if it's all right. So the Rappahannock Roundtable was originally housed by this body, and I believe in 2015 or 2016, body asked Friends of the Rappahannock to take over coordination of this enterprise. This is established at the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. There are watershed roundtables for the major river basins across the Commonwealth. Similarly, there are river basin commissions in fewer areas. But this is comprised of all sorts of different partners. It's voluntary. And we've come up with a mission to accelerate the pace and scale of land and water conservation across the Rappahannock River Basin. And we have been doing quite a bit of work. Thanks to many people here in this room, got a couple of advisory board members that help steer the work of this broader effort. And today, we're really excited to just go over some funding that is currently available for local governments, our federally and state recognized tribes, nonprofits, and then also celebrate some recent large grant awards to individual entities that then allow those funds to get passed through directly to private landowners, businesses, public entities for some of the projects that are contributing to water quality. If I had prepared better, maybe I could have thrown in something about septic funding, but to my knowledge, there's no new pod money that we can drop in CHIPS lab, or it's counterparts of the other PDCs. So I'm going to go through slowly. If you are glazing over, I'll move on quick, but if you have questions, Ellen or Mr. Chair, I don't know how you want to do that, but I'm very available. First off, the Department of Environmental Quality is anticipating 2 more rounds of funding being available, and these funds get offered up specifically to our planning district commissions and our watershed roundtables. But we actually have Spotsylvania County as a beneficiary of some of these funds. $1.5 million and $350,000 will be going announced out to your planning districts, which will then be available for environmental improvement projects. We're talking stormwater management and pollution reduction, runoff reduction, forestry type projects in your counties on public or private land. GWRC, Rappahannock Mutual Commission, all of the PDCs have received this funding in one way, shape, or form. Ask your board members to serve on those PDC boards. What's up with that money? Do we have any projects we want? That makes their jobs easier if you guys, local government staff, are bringing projects ready to them. And I can also answer more questions about that in the future. The National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, DEQ received a $1 million grant award, which was announced earlier this year. And I believe that's slated to be rolled out again, pass-through funding to the planning district commissions for similar type of environmental conservation projects. Again, the PDC staff would know better exactly when those funds will become available and how they can then become available to local government staff for projects that they might have at parks, schools, government facilities, or sometimes, depending on how the PDCs decide to structure their programs on private residences as well. A lot of times, these dollars can be leveraged as matching funds towards grants that local governments might be pursuing, or partners with local governments, like the Friends of the Rappahannock, or People Environmental Council, Downtown Greens, etc. And Laura Christian, wonderful resource, great to work with. She works directly with the Rappahannock Roundtable and all the PDCs to administer funds. I encourage reaching out to her, or even perhaps inviting her back in the future when these monies are active and available. Sure. There we go. You can wait till the end, unless it's a question.
Well, just, you mentioned 2 planning districts. 2 grants, which 2 planning districts?
So these will be available, competitively, the planning districts can request funds of any planning district in the Chesapeake Bay portion of the Commonwealth. Department of Conservation and Recreation currently has a funding opportunity open. This is the Recreational Trails Program. It is federal pass-through dollars from the Federal Highways Administration. Not all trails are exactly what you might think of a trail running along through the woods there. There are water trails, there are public boat launches, there are trailhead parking lots, interpretive signage. A lot of all these types of things are eligible here, and that is currently open. These are 80-20 matching grants, so you get 80% of the funds and only having to put up 20% match. That can be in kind. If your Parks and Rec staff has a machine that can help with a project, that can get counted. I know Lancaster County has received these funds in the past. I think Supervisor Nichols might have christened the boat launch at the Manor Foundation of Locust Grove on a rainy day with me last year. We're excited that they received an additional grant to develop a parking lot there in Locust Grove. And our friends at Shenandoah National Park Trust received $100,000 for some really great trailhead improvement in the park. I don't know if you've ever had the Dark Hollow beer, but the waterfall's namesake is equally pretty, and the trail is pretty needed of help. Nonprofits, local governments, and PDCs are all eligible applicants, salt water districts, schools, so that DCR funding is great. And of course, I failed to put the link in the slides, but I'll make sure Ellen gets that link. An example of one of those programs that's offering funding from DEQ to on the ground projects, the George Washington Regional Commission is administering, I want to say, upwards of $350,000. They've structured that program so a portion of it can go directly to private property for these stormwater management improvements. And we've got some really great public projects. I think a $75,000 improvement at a King George County public park. Another large fire retention project. I think a gentleman here might help with the bid package for that at Osner Park. I think every locality in PD16 has been the beneficiary of this on public or private property, and we are not done. I think we're getting those projects continue to go. Planning District 9, the Northern Neck PDC, and Middle Peninsula PDC have been out competing the rest of the state in securing those funds. Cheers to those amazing folks there. And we're hoping to continue to do that, but I always like to get a local spotlight conveniently when we're in that planning district. One of the major funding sources that can help with a lot of these projects is the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. This is a congressionally chartered nonprofit foundation that administers public and private funds, do all sorts of different projects. This Chesapeake Bay Stewardship Fund is obviously dedicated to the 6 states in the District of Columbia that comprise the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Here today, we're the York River watershed, but very close to the Rappahannock. And many partners, local governments, soil water districts, nonprofits, land trusts, and state agencies involved in successfully securing these funds. I'm actually under contract with this organization to help develop proposals and get applicants from idea to the finish line with funded projects. And we have a couple of different opportunities that are open now. Granted, one of them is due next Tuesday, so it might not be time to start a new idea. But if your public works department, parks, schools, houses of worship, which you may participate with, have ideas about these property improvements, erosion, stormwater management, or you want to beautify public spaces with vegetation, trees. These are some programs that are great. We also have fisheries, habitat management, improvements, oyster reefs, whole slew of things. But if you have questions about these, please let me know. And there's a couple other folks in the region that are doing really well with bringing these dollars in, and we'll highlight some of those here in a moment. Very similar, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has a grant program that is currently accepting applications through 3 different tracks. Chesapeake Wild has Congressman Whitman actually was one of the original co-sponsors of this funding program, so a big shout out to him for his work on this. We have implementation grants, which is get the work done. We have planning and technical assistance grants, which is get folks together with some engineers, some biologists, and make plans, designs. And most people here know how timely and costly that can be. And then we have a collaborative conservation grant, which is convening partners together to build consensus. And many hands lighten the load, rising tide lifts all those type things. All great programs. And I don't know if it's the next slide or further on, where we'll show each and every one of these grant programs has been awarded to a partner that works here in the Rappahannock watershed for various things. Conveniently, we're represented by the Deputy Secretary of Ag and Forestry. The Virginia Department of Forestry has some grants that are getting put on the ground in every single of the 18 counties that comprise the Rappahannock watershed. Their Trees for Clean Water grants are putting trees at schools across the basin, houses of worship and congregations, public parks, and even private property. Starting on Friday, we're going to be planting just around 9,000 trees off Mount Landing Creek in Essex County at a property that's soon to join the Rappahannock Wildlife Refuge Network. Just really great. And this might be a little help in the current budget negotiation. This program is putting dollars in trees, cleaning air, cleaning water directly in your constituent districts. And we're really glad to have so much work happening. We did give a shout out to Northern Neck Planning District Commission and the Northern Neck Warsaw Forestry Office, which is celebrating the 250th anniversary of the Northern Neck planting what started as 250 trees. That was easy. Well, Stratford Hall's arborist called and said, well, I want 85 trees instead of 50. Well, they got 85. The new high school in Lancaster County is right across the road from Ransom Nursery. Convenient that one of the best contractors in the region's there, and 250 large trees are going in there. The school said, we'll just do 250 ourselves. That turned into about a $200,000 project. We were able to secure matching funds. If you want to come out and plant a tree with that, there's a couple opportunities for local officials and from Department of Forestry. Laura Johnson's going to come out for that. Let me know and I'll get you to Travis. If you need to give a shout out to somebody at the schools in county, Travis has been amazing. One of the things we're trying to figure out from a funding standpoint the most is living shorelines. These are mostly applicable in the lower Rappahannock. Fortunately, right now, the soil and water districts mentioned here through the Rappahannock River Roundtable have access not just to the state funds from the Virginia Conservation Assistance Program, but we have a National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant, which is able to layer funds on top of those district-sponsored projects. These projects range from 10,000 to 250,000, or in Lancaster County's case, 2.8 something million for Westland Beach. So every penny that we can put in the hands of these landowners, most of the time private landowners, is being super beneficial. If you have constituents complaining about eroding shorelines or the bulkheads falling apart, make sure you're directing them to their local district office. It's an amazing technical resource, but also financial resources tied to it. Elvin's probably sick and tired of me talking about how we've got money to plant trees. There's not a reason why somebody should be paying full price to plant a tree in the Rappahannock River Basin. 10+ organizations are coming together to provide all kinds of different cost share. The Department of Forestry's got a great program called Throwing Shade Virginia, and if you go to your local nursery that's involved in the program and choose a native species tree, a dogwood instead of a Asian cherry tree, you're going to get $25 off that tree. The soil and water districts have among the most robust cost share available to help plant trees, and we're filling the gaps every which way. So if you again are trying to put trees at your HOA property or at your school, find someone from the Department of Forestry or the soil and water districts or my team, and we'll make sure that we're leveraging every resource that's available for you. This is some of the proudest moments, and sometimes I get to have a big cardboard check on behalf of the region. Governor Paul got a big check one year, but I'm not going to read through all of these, but just a couple highlights. Northern Virginia Conservation Trust is getting together a really innovative land conservation program in Stafford County. The Shenandoah National Park Trust that just got $200,000 to work with landowners adjacent to Shenandoah National Park to help implement conservation practices that extend the benefits of the national park without compromising private property. We've got $1.9 million coming to the Rappahannock River Roundtable that's going to get passed out in collaboration with PDCs and soil and water districts for green infrastructure, town beautification projects, think permanent parking lots, urban street trees, stormwater management. If you've got an MS4 permit, these dollars are meant to help you guys out. And we did Fredericksburg and Stafford and Brandon Spotsy's got an MS4 permit now. Piedmont Environmental Council is accelerating high priority land conservation and forest riparian buffers up in the north western part of the river basin. It's just over $5.5 million, which has a direct line to the Rappahannock River. This is 1 year from 2 funders. So it gets much bigger when you go out and start expanding the programs that you listed. But we have a lot to celebrate, and a lot of different organizations that aren't here today are part of that reason to celebrate. More shout outs. Greene County, this is the DCR's for Community Flood Preparedness Fund. This comes from the RGGI program. I'm most familiar with getting to help people apply for funds there. Here's just an example. Shout out to the town of Rappahannock for securing $5.4 million from this fund to help with the road improvement project and living shoreline. We got the town of Warrenton helping with their stormwater master plan improvements. The PDC in Middle Peninsula is adding capacity, and we've got some resilience plan going on in Greene County. I think around the drinking water reservoir and some other things. Just another funding program that local governments as well as nonprofits are available to apply for. The Virginia Land Conservation Foundation that's administered by DCR, and I imagine it'd be under the purview of the General Assembly to put funds there. Here in the Rappahannock watershed, we have 4 fairly significant awards that are going to protect historic and cultural resources, open space, forestry, and agricultural assets in the region. Just another great thing to celebrate, and something you can pass on to your staff at your counties. What about VLCF? Is that something we should look into? And kind of the crown jewel, one of the big things is half these programs, or not all these programs that it's mentioned, sometimes you can layer them all together. This is Westland Beach in down in Windmill Point, Lancaster County, where just before the Rappahannock meets the Chesapeake Bay. The National Fish and Wildlife Foundation gave Friends of the Rappahannock $100,000 to give Lancaster County. And then Virginia Department of Environmental Quality ran $300,000 to the Rappahannock River Roundtable. And then DCR through the Community Flood Preparedness Fund, that was a competitive application that the county put in. They were awarded $1.6 million. And I don't know how much the county leveraged, but it wasn't insignificant. But that's just an example of how even this small grant award can then be leveraged all the way up into 7 figures. And this is an incredible space for the public down there, and it's doing thousands and thousands of pounds of sediment pollution reduction. I encourage you to stop by. But with that, I will wrap up and say thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time. And if any members have questions now or in the future, I'll be happy to answer.
Any questions from members? See, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up on the agenda, will be with Chief Mills, but nothing that.
Thank you. We have received a report in advance and have summarized the key resources bills. So starting with the no, I am not going to refuse. No, I have gave the money grants, so we notice backwards and forwards. There was a significant amount of water resources legislation that, and thanks. I don't think there are particular bills you might want to ask questions now. I think that's a more productive way for you to respond rather than me picking which ones I think. Because it covers the vast array of everything from your current flooding to dredge material and everything in between. So with that, Mr. Chairman, for the sake of time, I'm not going to read all 27 pages here.
Well, for the sake of time, I'm going to combine this with the next item on the agenda. Report from the general general assembly session of state members. So we'll start over here to my left with Nicole, and then we'll go around and then I will wrap up that part. And then if there's any questions about bills or legislation, we can kind of tackle this together.
I don't think I had any particular legislation on the codes in this range, so I don't really have much to report, but yeah, you can say.
I'm saying not quite conversation yet, budget. Just that, but I had no word.
I'm going to save myself. I will come back to myself at the end, I promise, and we'll go over here to the senator.
Yes, saying, I think the responsibility, Presley, Vertiver, looking at their wastewater treatment and that's seems to have been why I put a short, so.
So I'm happy to talk about that, because you all talked about it, right? We sit in that quote and talking about it. Two things I was excited about, just personally, the legislation was we did work on some erosion and sediment control where there was inconsistencies with how DEQ is able to respond to erosion and sediment control. So I have the bill in regarding that. How we deal with stormwater was different than how we deal with erosion. So we were being very reactive versus being proactive. So we aligned those so that if you break the rules on the erosion side, and the sediment side, you're moving mass land. I'm running Chesapeake Bay region, and we're going to be large tracts of land that you follow DEQ rules. And so that's very important. We have some instances in my neck of the woods where we were seeing runoff problems, i.e. then that goes to water problems and water use problems. So that asked for this making signature from our governor on that one, and that was really important. And looking at it on the list, PFAS, that we can send like the next year. I don't know, there's so much in there, but I have the legislation in there. And my legislation became a part of the PFAS omnibus, can I say that? Everyone rolls their eyes, like, hey, omnibus around here, right? I think it's rolled into something, but we have some legislation. My link to that was, it went through that regardless of size, we all kind of do the same thing when we're talking about testing wastewater treatment plants, and then it goes around for biosolids. And realistically, if you're dealing with something at a small capacity, you should have the same rules if you're dealing with a big capacity and vice versa. And so that legislation that I worked on ended up becoming a large conversation. And Chairman Lopez put that legislation in his as part of the larger PFAS conversation, which Senator Stewart worked on exhaustively on the Senate side to really come together with all the stakeholders. So we can talk about that a lot, but certainly I would love to see that, Mr. Chairman, as a part of our conversation, especially once we know what really comes out and the great work that the agriculture put in and that Senator Stewart put in and we put in on the House side is not significant for PFAS and biosolids. PFAS, I should really say PFAS, because that's in everything. I'm really talking about the PFAS in biosolids and how that relates to wastewater. So to be very specific, PFAS is probably in that cup right here, but I'm talking, right? I'm talking about how it relates to water and to management. I know, but lots of that, and I'm gonna carry on about, we had some conversations as well about blue catfish, and certainly that's certainly on high on our agenda. And the fisheries conversation, the agenda buyer for potential future conversation, especially once we get to the bids and report back on the aquafauna studies that we've been doing into fisheries in general and blue cat, so there's not some of that, I would think.
Definitely would be better prepared next time, but, I know that, for one of the budget items that I've been for, which we don't know where to settle out for funding was for BDAX and the BMP program project that way. The previous governor's budget, and put it back in the budget to be funded. What first side, the House side has $2 million in funding, the Senate side has 4. We'll see where that ends up, to bring that funding back. To continue to fund the research and the implementation of the ERB programs in the region. And I was working on, got asked, more on rates in regards to water. The triennial, for regulated water companies, triennial rate case filing to slow down the increases in water rates for regulated water companies that play in a big way in Carolina, a small part in your district. But also looking at other ways, we'll be looking at other ways outside of session to help reduce some of the costs for wastewater treatment. And some of the programs that are available to, for grants to tap into for moving wastewater systems that are managed by those companies so that they don't pass those costs to customers. So, knowing a lot about water and things for
And then we have, Delegate Paul from mine. Yes, there are calls.
Still.
Yeah, we'll call.
Oh, yeah.
Address your legislation.
There you go.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot today. I really appreciate it. Love to talk about a few different things that we had cooking during the legislative session this year that are partially focused on some of the work we're doing. And then I'll share a couple other things that I think are tangentially focused, but becoming more and more important as we try to figure out how and where to site some of our data centers around the Commonwealth as well. So the first one, we've got a budget amendment in both the House and the Senate budget to provide a water study for the groundwater in Western Loudoun and Northern Fauquier, where we've seen about 800 wells come up empty. And some of the towns and municipalities' wells have been now dug significantly deeper than when they started about 25 years ago. And so that's one of the things we want to see what's going on there and what the causes and what the kind of potential solutions are, whether that's a groundwater management area like we have down south or whatever the department recommends. Some of the other bills that we worked through this year, agrivoltaics, HB 508, which puts agrivoltaics in a farmer forward definition into the code, one of the strongest in terms of protecting farmland anywhere in the country. That was a combined effort with Senator Perry and the Department of Agriculture and Forestry and other friends as well, Farm Bureau, et cetera. And what this does is basically it gives us the opportunity down the road to be able to create grant programs around it, or to at least ensure that we're not having anybody claiming to be doing, farm and agriculture and solar panels when they're actually pulling off, utility scale in the same place. So we've defined that in order to prevent that from happening. So I think that will be helpful there. In terms of air quality, HB 507, we've got, which it basically is existing DEQ guidance that we've codified to ensure that data centers are using Tier 4 generators, which are the highest quality in terms of, therefore, the lowest emissions. And then we've also got bills that are going to be citing, our first sort of citing reforms on where data centers can be, with Delegate Thomas, making sure that localities have the the power to do setbacks and improve that siting process. So I don't know that that'll have too much of a water resource question, but we did have the first bill. This came from Delegate Guzman, who represents Western Prince William. We did have the first bill to actually require monitoring and disclosure of water use, which, as these data centers move further west, the very bottom of my district touches on the Rappahannock. But as these data centers continue to move west, we want to make sure we're knowing exactly how much water they plan to pull out of the ground during those times, and that's HB 496. We also did quite a lot on PFAS this year, and I won't continue to beat that drum, but I thought it was fantastic that we were able to reach those agreements. So that's what we've got from the 30th.
Thank you very much. As far as updates from me, Senator Reese, myself, we had a kind of follow bill from waterworks bill last year. Private waterworks, they go to receivership from the state. Do it, and code was written only for private waterworks, and so legislation was very simple. The legislation removed the word private from two different paragraphs of the section of code, so that all waterworks go on the same receivership. Working with Orange County Board Supervisors out there trying to get some money for Rappahannock Service Authority, so they can do the state that's required them to do. I don't think we got any money in the budget, but the budget process still hasn't finished. So I'm not holding my breath. We'll try to find an alternate source of funding, maybe for President Rappahannock can help out with that. Seems like there's a lot of money going through there. And just all I have. So with that, does any members of the commission have any questions for either staff or elected officials? Seeing none, here we go. Formalize amendment to the FY26 Work Plan through a concept December 3rd, 2025. Staff.
You have a development from me that refreshes we really see part of the issues working center for it is really the Rappahannock Drive is requested the commission you look at membership on the tribe in the commission, what that would mean. And what the commission did. That request came in late before the meeting, so it wasn't kind of research, not much. And that you make done representative the tribe, I'm saying the issue, the commission took a vote and cleaning that they served the minutes to amend the work plan so that we would spend time into the remainder of this fiscal year, and it would actually carry over the next fiscal year. This would be the lead up to action that would be required if mission were to add to its membership, it would require a change in state code. So you would have a recommendation from staff or the wording change to the work plan we need. This would be to formalize the action that was taken in December. We didn't actually have the language in front of them, was supposed to concept. And then we'll also have a copy of the letter from the tribe and the ultimately the section code will be changed. And with that, staff's recommendation will be just to adopt this suggested change or some revision to that based on the whole discussion to the work plan, and we could head down that path. And a motion for the
Mr. Barrett, is it, I'll go to review that one, if that recommended, is it specific to the Rappahannock Tribe, or?
Yes.
Is there any discussion in that work group about any other tribes that are in the?
What was intended is that we would have to look at a range of issues because you have the tribes. Rappahannock is federally, there are other federally tribes. There are also state residence tribes. And so we would have to answer your questions relative to what's all that mean. Because we're responding to the request from the Rappahannock tribe, but it could be that the action we ultimately take is more broad than that. So we would have to be able to answer questions you will answer. And we need to take the time working with the tribe, working with, division of civil services, because their staff members that have worked on tribal issues over the years. So.
I think that was the.
Just to clarify, we're not saying that we are voting on accepting this request. This is going to be a priority for us to have a conversation about just up in here to address some of the concerns we're going to need. Just as one tribe, we're going to be expansive to all federal, state, how we're going to do that. So that's what it's going to be. And so that's why it's a topic of conversation for an upcoming agenda. That's just to make sure it's part of the work for all those questions we have.
I did you.
So we have a motion. Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the motion passes.
Well, thank you very much.
Next up is the future meeting dates, locations, June 17th, Richmond County, September 30th, Madison County, December 2nd. Carroll County, sorry, Paul here, top on the list. Request about the online delegate.
And to answer the delegate's question, we rotate. And the way it works out is we meet in the spring in Middle Basin. We meet in the summer in the Lower Basin, and we meet in the fall in the Upper Basin. And then the December meeting is always at central location as we're waiting on the General Assembly session. But what that does is in each of those regions, there are 5 jurisdictions. And so once every 5 years, it's in your locale. And it or the way that it's
And so well, that's meeting for the 5 years.
That is true. That is very true. And so I'll be happy to tell you call up to give you more when your rotation is. I give you all. But we were in Warrington a couple of years back. Yes, that's it.
And then
we have the future agenda.
The next future agenda items, Chesapeake Bay agreement refresh. The 2026 PFAS legislation signed by the governor and discussion. Preliminary discussion of Rappahannock tribe request to become RRBC member. And then Secretary of Agriculture and Forestry, Governor member priorities. Are there any potential conflicts that the issues? Fisheries.
You have any?
Sure. Okay. Any other potential future agenda items?
I mean, Mr. Chairman, for PFAS, I have spoken to there were 4 primary advocacy teams who were engaged in the negotiation of that legislation. Farm Bureau, the wastewater operators, and the environmental solids council, and Chesapeake Bay Commission, all have agreed to participate in the panel discussion of what is ultimately signed. And the idea was we did it in June rather than trying to do it now. Right now, the bills are on governor's desk, and so we really don't have government for amendments. I will certainly be engaged with the state agencies. As you know, we've had the state agencies in front of us talking about it. What I wanted to do is I wanted to give those primary advocacy groups the opportunity to talk about the legislation from there, and we can also we're going to be the health department on chief cognizant agencies, and we've heard from their research expert previously. We can follow it.
Any other topics?
There's a question. So if, after this, we have something that we would want to talk about for the one input on the agenda, you guys reach out to the building or you?
Or we can get pretty helpful. And then the next meeting might go to the following meeting, depending on time and when we set up. Absolutely. Good question. All right, so I guess we're going to do this for the on agenda, not open it up for last comments, which kind of work our way around any last comments, questions for anybody on the side of the table. Now, anybody on the side of the table? Now, we have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?